All right, welcome everybody. This is the February 28th meeting of the Stockbridge Finance Committee. We are calling the meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. And basically, I would like to just make a few introductory comments, if I might. The principal purpose of this meeting, and forgive me for speaking loudly, but the masks are difficult to deal with. The principal purpose of the meeting is going to be to discuss not only the operating budget, but also elements of a future capital budget. We don't have a formal document. We are not at this point prepared to talk about proposed warrant articles as of yet. So that's where we're at. Now, basically, just by way of housekeeping, Michael has circulated all of the elements to date of the operating. I'm gonna come to that in a minute. All of the operating budget articles to date. And what he has also circulated to you are copies of the draft operating budget. You also have detail of the capital requests. You also have outstanding loan payments, and basically these are the key elements that we have. And as we move forward, if there's anybody here that wants other printed materials, okay, please get in touch with either me or Michael, and we'll make it up for you. Basically, we did not want to print all of the materials that were circulated. This is a major undertaking. It's hundreds of pages. So that's where we're at right now. The first item of the business of this committee will be approval of our last meeting minutes of September 30, 2021.
So moved.
Any discussions? Okay, so 9:30, forgive me, 21 minutes.
We need a roll call.
Motion.
Jay, we need a roll call vote.
Do you have somebody?
Okay, that's fine. Motion I have is Jim. Second is Steve. Any discussion whatsoever? Okay, Steve, you approve?
Steve Schatz, aye.
Okay.
Jim Vance, aye.
Pam?
Pam Boudreau, aye.
And I approve. Diane?
Aye.
Okay, so right now we have 5-0.
Is that your other? Is that your other member?
I approve also. Neil. I
Okay.
approve.
Okay, that's Neil. Neil, do you approve the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Hang on. By phone. Okay, good. All right, now, moving into the next item, the draft operating budget. Basically, just to set the stage for this document, what you have here is a baseline of an operating budget. It shows on it a number of increases to date that include, the first point is education, which is about $460,000. We have a slight increase in the ambulance cost. We also have certain increases that include employee benefits, and we're going to talk about all of these. Salaries, we have some of our employees have salary increases at this point. This draft document does not include operating increase expenses, i.e. proposals from the police department, proposals of salary and expenses from the fire department, and requests from the highway department at this point. And right now, I'd like to call on our town administrator, Michael Canales, to go through this. Stephen?
Before we turn, you just said, Jay, that it doesn't include increases in police department or fire department salaries?
The fire department with respect to
They're in there.
stipends.
They're in there. They're in there.
The stipends are in
Yeah,
there?
the only one that's not in there is the proposal from the police department of an additional.
Well, what I was saying also, the new position, police department from the proposal, and also an increase in the stipends for certain of our volunteer firemen.
That's in-
you know.
That's in there.
It's in here.
Is that in there?
That is in there.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's,
And then we also have expense items relative to the.
Yeah, we have some capital discussions,
Fine.
mainly around the fire as capital and that.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, Michael, take us through this thing.
All right, let me get it up on the screen and set it so that we can optimize it. There, so here is our annual operating budget for 2023. This is the first draft. So I had everything in by the middle of the month from the departments, and then everybody had till last week to get everything in as far as other boards and committees and that. So this is our first look at the overall budget. Whoops. Always make sure your cursor is in the right spot. If not, you jump all over the place. Apologize. There we go. So what we have right here is just a 2% built into the current draft of the budget for employees. And that makes up predominantly most of your first category as far as general government. You guys do have the sheet right in front of you, detailing that out. You will see that there is a good increase in the tax collector treasurer's expenses. And we'll get into that one specifically because we're pulling some stuff and trying to get them in the right categories, such as tax title didn't have its own category, yet we have a bunch of those happening. So we are moving around some of those, and probably what I'll do is as I go along, that's gonna come out of the litigation line. So I'll probably end up lowering the litigation line. But right now, this was just my first crack at it.
You said the first crack, the employee increase was 2% on average?
2%, yeah,
2%,
as a
right.
base. So that's what the unions have and the rest. Information technology, you'll see is up 20,000. For whatever reason, it was dropped from 156 down to 100. And then I didn't pick up on last year, but we had a payment for software that we have that was 20,000 short. So I am picking it up this year and getting that corrected. So I'll have to pull that. I'll probably be coming with a reserve account transfer to cover this year's one. So it should have been 120 this year, but it was one that I didn't pick up, but I did pick up now.
Just a question on that while we're on information technology. Do we have individuals that have familiarity with cyber liability exposures? Because basically, we've got a lot of critical information here with respect to social security numbers, bank accounts, et
Yes.
cetera.
So-
And the reason I'm saying this is I do have peripheral involvement right now in cyber liability insurance. And there's a lot of hacking.
We have a cyber liability policy through Maya. We also back up our systems. We have a shadow drive that's backing up, but we also have hard drives that every day are switched out. So the only way you can 100% guarantee that you won't lose your data is you got to be completely disconnected. And since we disconnect each day, physically unplug them and rotate each day, we actually have a shadow backup for every day. So
Good.
At worst, if we had a data breach, we would only lose a day in the worst case scenario. So,
Appreciate it, thank you.
yep. Yep, You'll see that the police department salaries, I need to tweak that one because there was, there's a formula error in there that I just realized. So I'm gonna have to touch up on that one again. But police department, we have 2% raises for salaries, creating the expenses that are there. Overall, though, the salary lines are pretty much set, so by contract. So we're in the second year of a 3-year contract that's moving forward. So I need to, like I said, I need to look at that one again because it was pointed out that there's an error in the formula and make sure that it's correct. And you'll see the rest of these are all small increases across the board as far as for different pay. When we get down to the educational, this is where we have, and you probably read it in the paper, due to the fact that the Stockbridge student enrollment went up, Great Barrington and others went down. The shift happened within the formula, which created a larger than normal adjustment at the school, which right now is $460,760. As the population gets smaller, small swings it'll create a bigger move one way or the other.
Michael, I read that was 14.9% increase because of the number of students?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And do you know the number of students from Stockbridge?
I don't know the number offhand.
There's an increase.
It was 7 was the increase, and yeah, Great Barrington had a reduction. So then so theirs went down. So the overall went up, plus the fact that our student went up created that sort of perfect situation
I
this
think it's
year.
like about 109, Jim, something like that,
Yeah, okay.
in that range.
I have I'm gonna scan in the sheets and get them to you. I have the budget from the school. I won't, if anybody wants a full copy, I can scan the entire document in, or I can just I will plan on distributing the summary unless somebody wants the entire breakdown. Water sewer department, most of the same. There is a good sized jump in sewer department expenses, and that's around testing requirements that the state is now implementing, additional testing that we have to do. And I know I have the health department one, and like I said, a couple of these will still be tweaked as we move forward. I am looking at restructuring the Council on Aging, because I think that we can do a better job, and restructure it in a way that allows us to use the difference between our Council on Aging and others is that they don't have a building to operate. It's more of operating just programming. And I think that there are some paths we can take, which we can get into when we discuss specifics. The debt schedule is right here. That's got everything for this year. And we'll get into the debt schedule a little later because there are some key points coming up in debt. We have debt falling off in 2024 and we have debt falling off in 2027. And I will be bringing up that there may be some strategic ways we may want to look at how that's being done. Employee benefits, there is a jump in the retirement. There is level funding for county health and dental. That one's a little interesting because they approved an 8.1% increase for health insurance, but they're doing a premium holiday of 1 month, which is 8.1%, which means it'll be level. But that also means going into fiscal year 2024, there'll be a built-in 8.1% increase. So just call attention. So right now, where we stand on this initial draft look at the budget is the overall budget is actually, and this is probably slightly different than the one I sent out to you guys. It's 716,000. 250 is on the town side and 460 is on the school side. And you can see the different categories. And I will fix that public safety one because like I said, there's a formula issue in there.
So, Michael, excluding the increase in the education piece, which is quite dramatic.
Yep.
what is the percentage of increase in the raise and appropriate budget exclusive of that education piece? Just so that we can get sort of apples to apples from this year to last year.
Right. So,
Is that the figure at the bottom where it says total raise and appropriate minus?
Education, correct.
So you're looking at rounded off 218,000.
yeah, it'd be this number right here, so it's, I'm trying to think of how best to. 3.3%.
3.3.
Yeah.
In the operating budgets for police, fire, and highway department, and also facilities,
Right.
how are we factored in energy costs? What is
Well,
the,
that's a one that I definitely think we are gonna have to be aware of as we go forward over the next, say, month of developing this budget. Because that could end up being very much a concern going into next.
does this draft budget have any guesses as to?
It doesn't have anything relative to gasoline.
Pretty much, it was looking like we weren't gonna have to make adjustments, and when I did put this out, and yes, the world has changed drastically in the last 5 days, and I think probably our best bet is to really seriously look at that.
Okay.
And over the next month, probably by the end of this month, I'd like us to, by the end of the month of March, have this budget pretty solid. And we can actually go right into probably mid-April before we need to set all the warrant articles. So we could hold off, especially on a couple where fuel could be impacted.
I just got an oil bill today, which
These are the
doesn't
things,
take your breath away.
the basic issue with fuel is there is nobody at this juncture that can forecast where the price of oil per barrel is going to go based on the Ukraine. And what's happening is they claim that every $10 increase in the barrel of oil, the price jumped 20 to 40 cents at the pump. So this is something that I have talked to Michael about. We've got to have some kind of a factor in here relative to fuel costs, i.e.
30%, 40, right. You guys, we can discuss that of a percentage increase that we think we should be applying. And I can build that into even our next budget discussion.
I think it would be very helpful
All right.
to do it. And, err on the high side.
Yep.
We don't benefit out of.
It's also a little premature too, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Ukraine situation.
This is a guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
We might not know by town meetings.
No.
We're probably going to be guessing.
Exactly.
Let's put the guess in so that we know, worst case, I had to use that. I can't use that phrase, excuse me. Just put it in.
Yeah. So
Why can't you use worst case?
What did you say?
Because as soon as I
gets worse.
guess what, it gets worse.
yeah.
You know that.
So for the next budget, when we go to meet, I'll build in a 50% increase. The fuel, and see where the budget comes in,
Sure.
and then go from there.
Yeah.
That's wise.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is a terrific first effort.
Now, basically, and I just want to repeat that this is a baseline draft document. And obviously, as we move forward, we need to talk to some of our departments, i.e. police, fire, highway, where there are potential new expenses. And the plan would be to bring these departments in at a joint meeting with the select board, as we have done in the past. In other words, we bring them in, we'll schedule this, but we'll bring them in at a joint meeting, select board and finance committee and one or more of the departments, so that they can present their budgets.
Yeah. I think that we start off with they're sort of the big three.
Sure.
Fire, police and highway. And then if the finance committee or select board want to identify any other departments they feel like should be brought in, I think that we have quite a few that are pretty much leveled as is, and I'm not sure if they need to, but I think I can answer those. Little things like, the accountant's office is not changing much of anything, things like that. So, but if there are any departments that any of you, I think, want to bring forward, through the chair, let them know, we can bring those groups in. And I'll coordinate with the two chairs of the committees to set up meetings going forward. So.
You might want to mention also the fact that you have in process dialogue with Lennox on the ambulance services.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a number from Lennox. I have the number from Lee. And I know we talked about it last year, but if we're, it seems like we were just talking about it. And the time to discuss further will actually be right after town meeting. At this point, we're locked into going with them at this point. So I should be getting that number soon. And like I said, I'll be finalizing these numbers over the next, 2 weeks and really lock them down. I'll lock in the 50% increase for fuel costs across the board, see where that pulls our budget to. And I will have a couple people go through this spreadsheet too and make sure there's no formula errors or anything else happening in there that can happen.
Bill?
Jay, first of all, I'm sorry I was late. I'm so used to coming here at 6:30
Somebody said that.
that the 6 o'clock start just fooled me, and I apologize. Mike, is there an element in the budget for the costs associated with the possibility of school amalgamation or combination or whatever we're calling it?
We'll come to that. Okay, that's part of the capital, the whole capital and debt structure.
That's around the debt. So I'd like to spend a little time talking about debt, how we can approach, just some ideas, and then how this committee and then obviously the select board feel about it, because we have some major costs coming up around infrastructure and of course the potential on a new school. So one of the key things is if you want, we could jump right into the debt one unless there's something operational. So if you go right to the debt one, and I will put it up on the screen too.
Before you get to that, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the highway department, snow and ice, given the last storm we just had here, are we on track? We've had 90,000 in the last couple of years. Are we on track for that number?
I think overall, we're still in pretty good shape, right, Hugh? We're billing, we're behind, so we're not, that's one of those ones that we'll be closing out in the next couple of weeks and really taking a good look at whether or not that needs to be adjusted.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, our salt vendor doesn't get them invoices right to us. It takes a while. So it should be pretty close with projection from last year. I'm going to say we're going to end up close. I know that budget had gone down in previous years when it was taken away. Unfortunately, these new storms were almost utilizing more material, so.
And the type of storm, right, Hugh?
Type of storm, yeah.
It's been ice storms.
Ice, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, we, for years struggled to get the budget up. I mean, it used to be $30,000 and we were always.
But we went over 100,000 a couple times.
No, it was 30 budgeted.
Right.
And then we were always going into free cash because we never budgeted correctly.
Exactly. I remember that. That's why I asked the question.
Ah, there you
So,
go.
and here, I'm gonna, actually 2 sheets to point you to.
Yep.
These are sort of the two comparable sheets, and I threw up the debt schedule on the screen. So right now, we're looking at multiple, multiples of millions of dollars in infrastructure repairs. This includes the Tuckerman Bridge, the Second Averitt Road Bridge, potentially the intersection, and a salt shed down at the DPW, which is in really poor shape. And that's going to come up over the next 2 cycles. So one of the things that I began looking at, it really got me thinking about it was actually, and I think he's on here tonight, was Patrick's article about interest rates. Because he was spot on the fact that on a 20-year note, an interest rate of 8% doubles the cost of the loan. So, $4 million loan will have $4 million in interest at 8%. Right now, we're still luckily because of our rating, we still think we're going to be close to that 2% right now. But we all know that interest rates are trickling up. So one of the things that is happening, if you look on the debt schedule, the sewer expansion A, B, they're highlighted in yellow. Those are coming off the books in 2024.
A and B?
A and B. So one of the questions becomes, since if we wanted to get out, now I don't want us to wait till 2024. So if we really think we're going to move some of these projects forward and we want to go out and borrow, what we could do is take free cash this year, pay off the loan in 2023. Because if we took on, say, $3.5 to $4 million in a loan in order to do these projects, the debt schedule is almost going to stay level. But we'd have to pay it down if we wanted to go out now. So next year we don't have a double hit of the new loan plus what was owed. So it's just trying to be a little strategic about how we approach this, because this is probably could be the last time in a while. I mean, none of us are, Jay pointed out with the oil, none of us really know, but everything's pointing to the fact interest on money is going to get more expensive. And just using a simple loan calculator, you could see that at 2%, a $4 million loan over 20 years is $900,000 in interest. But if you get to 8%, it's $4 million. So the question really becomes, is now the time, if we wanted to borrow for these projects, do we do it now? Now with a loan borrowing, we have to get the project up and going within 2 years. So you can't borrow and just sit on the money and then wait for the projects. But we have the engineering moving forward already on these projects. Averitt Road's going to be completed with it. It's roughly a $1.2 million bridge. We're hoping to get a bridge grant over the next cycle or two, but we're still looking at $700,000 there. The Tuckerman Bridge, we're starting the engineering on that. We're going to have to come up with about $200,000 probably in engineering for that. That is a full bridge. We're looking at close to $2 million on that bridge alone. We're hoping that now I've closed out the MassWorks grants on the Larry Wog. So I'm hoping to go after $1 million grant through the MassWorks program for the Tuckerman. But that still leaves $200,000 in engineering and another $1 million to cover the difference. So you can see how quickly all of a sudden these projects, the salt shed is going to be a couple $100,000 easily. So these things really start to add up. So it just becomes a question of shouldn't we be trying to borrow now? Now the second piece, which is up on the board, is the top. We have the school, this building's loan coming off in 2026. So we have 4 more years. So I have it built into the budget to just pay this year. But say, for example, if the school was to pass, say the school passes next year. Next year, if the school was to pass, we would need to, one of the options we could have, because it won't be on our ledger, but it'll be on the school ledger, could be to take our free cash or stabilization money, pay off that loan, and then if the school loan comes on, have it where we minimize the impact of the school loan. So.
Can we redeem those bonds without a penalty?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, my understanding is we can, from speaking to Unibank, so that we can pay them down.
Let me ask, let me
And I
ask,
will
I have another
confirm.
bond guy here, I should be careful.
Michael, let me ask a twisted question. Is there any prospect that a new high school in the future won't be approved?
Well, that's
I
all
don't
the town
think so.
meeting vote. I mean,
I think it's
approved
unlikely.
already.
right.
It's been turned down already.
Several
It'll be
times.
turned down again
Couple
before
times.
we get to, yes, if we ever get.
I guess the only thing I'm pointing to is we know a vote's going to come forward within probably the next, and whether it passes or not. I'm just pointing out that if we were to hold our reserves to pay off that loan, we could minimize the debt impact to the town.
Well, can I just say something, Jay?
Go ahead.
And this is sort of an annual speech around this time. About 8 years ago, we, that is the select board and the finance committee, arrived at an informal agreement that the reserves, a combination of free cash and stabilization, would be roughly in 10% of budget.
He can comment on that.
I know, I
Yeah.
know that, I'm aware of it. And so, looking at the numbers that we have right now, we're somewhere around 4.9 million.
Yep.
Just in those two categories alone. There's no special stabilizations. And the stabilization contains the $1 million stabilization that we put aside pre-COVID. So let's use a $13 million budget number, okay? So you're looking at least on our standard, about 2.6 in total reserves. So we are, we're over-reserved.
Right.
With taxpayer money. It's the cheapest form of capital we have. And my feeling is that to the extent that we can use that, it's better than borrowing money. And but the other thing is that you've already got, I shouldn't say you, but at least in the materials that were sent to us about the special articles, there's a little over $900,000 in projects that would be paid for next year out of free cash.
Right.
So the free cash line of 2.5 is already down by that amount.
Yep.
And we just have to pay some attention to,
So I'll throw that up there, right? All the requests to date that have come in reduces our free cash down to 1.33.
yeah,
And if we were to try to pay off a loan, say the school did pass, we tried to do that. And if we had to do it for the year 2024, take on payments for 2024, we'd need 1.3 million, which we would have in the stabilization, which means we would still have 10% in each and could pay down these loans. I guess the big thing is, I understand what you're saying about not using the reserves. Are we a year or so, I'm meeting with Peter Dillon this week to talk about the timing. Because are we looking at about a year for that vote? Because that's almost gonna drive everything. And that's where I'm wondering that's the only reason I'm actually even contemplating or threw out to you guys the concept of borrowing, say like $4 million to do these other projects, is to hold our funds to pay down these other loans to minimize the impact of a school. Because everything my understanding is within, and I know Patrick's on a couple of the committees and he's on this call, that vote is probably coming within the next year.
yeah.
So
When we go out to bond, Bill, when we do that, we bond in anticipation of actually setting, we have a construction period and the actual bond rate isn't set, it's my understanding, until the construction period until the project is actually completed.
yeah.
So do we get a bond rate? Do we get the final bond, is there a fixed bond rate? Or is there, do we have the interest rate risk over the construction period? I guess that's
I think it depends on whether we go fixed or floating.
okay.
And there is such a thing, although I don't know about size in this case, because we're talking relatively small amounts. There's something called a bond anticipation note,
Right.
which is also tax exempt and is meant for exactly what you just described. Borrowing in anticipation of later issuing a bond for a defined project. There are obviously rules around what you can and can't do.
Well, there are arbitrage rules.
Right,
I know
right.
that, but
The problem with the note, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, right, the interest, until you go out to fully bond, the note isn't locked in on it's only that note that's for,
That's right.
yeah.
And given the likelihood of rising rates over the next year, at least, it seems to me if we can fix now, we should.
Right, but the problem is that we can't even go out to borrow for the school without a vote.
I understand.
MSBA. So that's why I didn't throw the school, I don't throw the school out here in this because we almost don't control that. It's really in the school district's hands and based on the votes when they can go out. They can also go out and you do that bond where it's a drawdown one during the construction phase. So they only borrow as needed and then you have to finalize it. But once again, the interest rate isn't locked in until the finalization.
Right.
So where the school's gonna come in, I don't know. The only one I think we could do is if we're trying to anticipate that, is that we can, if we were to go out and had the vote in May, and we know that this work's being done, we can be out in June, going out now for, say, infrastructure ones, it's 4 million. That's the only one we can control. I hate to say it, the interest rate on the school is gonna be what it is when it falls.
yeah.
So,
I wasn't thinking of the school so much, but you've got other projects that haven't even hit the design phase yet.
yeah.
You have the design phase, you don't even know, we don't even know what the extent quote of a new school is going to be. Vis-a-vis Southern Berkshire and or Berkshire Hills, they're not at that point.
That's in the land of politics. We're not going to know.
Well, politics is going to convert to cash.
We're not gonna know much
Relative to
I have
building a building.
Well, I don't have a final one. We did have construction estimates done for the Tuckerman.
Yeah.
So complete replacement is $2 million. Like I said, 1.2 for the Second Averick Road, and that's in its Chapter 85 review period right now. So we do have some costs that we know, and then we're going to try to offset them with grants to go after the small bridge grants and others. But like I said, how much do we go after? Do we just set money aside? Do we borrow 2 million and set 2 million aside for construction projects? There's a bunch of options here. I'm just trying to throw everything out there and just saying, I think we all need to recognize the one big thing that's going to come, may be voted down, may not, is just, yeah.
And what's the downside if it is voted down under your idea?
Construction, the school,
The school never happens.
you're going to see increased costs in
Or it
the
doesn't
operational
happen in
budget.
5 to 10 years.
You're gonna see operational budget increases and probably what I would assume they do, because I've seen it in other school districts, they'll probably go after, and whether or not the MSBA will even throw in money is to fix the existing school. But sometimes if they've evaluated the school needs to be replaced and you get to that point, they won't put you in the maintenance program. So the risk there is we're funding all repairs 100% ourselves. So, yeah. And then the other question I have for the school, what are they looking at? Are they looking at a 20-year, 30-year, or even up to a 40-year?
Right.
Because through the USDA program, federal borrowing, you can go up to 40 years on a school project. So I'm not sure what the school is. But like I said, I think a lot of that, we just don't know. But that's why I'm being a little hesitant on how much reserves. Do we want to hold enough reserves that we could pay down the note on this building and the water treatment plant for the pay off 2 to 3 years worth of payoff and have it banked there? So, school does happen, we pay this off. We've just knocked 400 to 450,000 off of what would be the increase on the taxpayers and just try to mitigate it.
I have a comment to make, and I've kind of lived by this. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. If there is that kind of money in reserve that is allowed to be used to pay down. My suggestion would be to pay down and get it out of the way. Your slate is clean. What comes to the front, you're going to have to deal with it in whatever way, shape, or form it is. And to anticipate is crazy because it's going to be whatever it's going to be depending on, I'm referring to the school with regard to however that vote goes. We have no idea. We don't even have any idea about the school district itself.
Correct.
In that way. So if there is money that is allowable with regard to still having some reserve, then my suggestion, I would vote for, not that we are doing that right now, but my comment would be go ahead and pay it off.
I think what you're suggesting is part of the entire budget process, that as we move forward,
Yes.
we try to solidify the operating budget with respect to the expenses of the
Yes.
new expenses. We need to talk about the capital items, how we're going to pay for them.
Yes.
And in the capital issue, do we talk about debt drawdown now to offset some of this cost?
Right.
And what do we do with free cash and stabilization monies? You know, this is our first meeting, and this is part of
It's great to hear that because.
Money is to be used
I
for
wanna-
the
I wanna
purpose of which
use-
it is intended.
Yeah.
Use it.
All right.
It's taxpayers' money.
right.
And we are the stewards of all of that, and to be what I call, I'll use the crazy word frugal, but would be my
So I'll
suggestions.
I'll build scenarios around that.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to hear, sort of in this
Yeah.
draft. I need to hear what people think, what direction we should be moving in, and then we can fine tune this as we go along.
I think
Could be.
it's a very good idea.
Yeah.
And the other point that should be made is that the rating agencies look very dimly on using reserves to reduce the tax rate, okay? That's a no-no, all right?
Mass DOR isn't going to let us do it, so
Right.
just forget that.
Yeah, but I just.
But in a way, we are doing it, but we're doing it by taking
Yes.
an actual bill off the
If you
table.
reduce debt service on.
Is something
Correct.
It has the same
Yep.
impact.
Yep.
I have just an anticipation of eventually getting to the special articles. If you could get us I'd like to know what the reserve fund balance is, two, what the sewer and water available
Yep.
are. Because you do discuss some of this in those special articles. And
Well, I do have the stabilization, free cash, OPEB, cemetery,
and I know, you've got cemetery, I just didn't have
sewer and water.
sewer and water
Yep.
and reserve, and if there's any money left in the reserve fund balance.
These are all of our,
This is all it?
yep, that's it, except for sewer and water.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can have those totals
That's fine.
on this sheet.
And the other one, in one of the special articles for sewer and water, the master plan, the inflow study,
Yep.
which amounts to about $120,000. You have a question there as to whether or not federal funds can be used, and if,
Though they can be.
but not tonight. I follow the regimen.
All right.
But it's something that I would like to hear more about.
Yeah.
When we eventually get there.
The other thing that we need to find out, and I have talked to Michael about it, is to get some type of definitive statement from the actuary as to the funding of OPEB. He has verbally claimed that we're fully funded, 3.7 million.
Last email I had said he thought we were close.
So we need to hear from the actuary, okay?
So we heard from him, supposedly last year, we were something like 87% funded.
It was a high.
He's
It was up there.
he's heard something else, okay?
So I don't know if it with interest on the account or whatever, or liabilities or have changed or whatever. So I will confirm that.
That's fine.
Yep.
And one other, there was, I think, a typo
There might be, this is,
No, I don't mean a typo of spelling. I didn't mean a typo, but I'll just get the notes here. In this Ice Glen Forestry project,
yep.
there were actually two $70,000 amounts.
Yeah, it was supposed to be at 10,000 and I already corrected that on the sheet here. One was for signs, 10,000, one was 70.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. Do I have anything else? Not for tonight.
We did have a capital down, so one thing that's part of capital, I am including that ARPA. So just to let you know, one of the big changes to ARPA was the fact that the federal government announced that every community could take a one-time $10 million loss and could claim up to 10 million, which we didn't get. We have 533, but every community could claim up to 10 million as a loss. Therefore, any amount that you receive that's less than 10 million, you could use for any municipal purpose. If you got more, somebody like Pittsfield, everything above 10 million, you still had to go through the different buckets. So one of the things, and the select board did vote at their last meeting to declare all lost revenue, therefore freeing it up to be used for any municipal purpose.
That is
We,
awesome.
I also raised to Michael, the fact that, we do have a COVID rescue fund.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly, the 564,000. And we need to talk about that, obviously at some point as to where those monies go and
How
what.
long do we have to,
We have 2 years to appropriate it for a project and we have till 2026 to fully expend.
That's what I heard.
and is that it from ARPA for us?
That is probably it for ARPA. I mean, to be honest, the reason why they did this is originally what the money was supposed to be used for COVID and the rest, because it's of what's happened and now it's not needed for those uses. This has allowed the money to be freed up for other uses because it's already been distributed. So,
All of it by the state?
yeah. So some communities did, depending on various criteria. Like I said, Pittsfield received over 39 million. North Adams was 3 point something. They were the big ones. A lot of other communities were similar to us in the 500,000, 600,000 range. But by declaring it, like I said, by declaring it lost revenue under that, it frees it up for any municipal purpose. So, and you'll see that the board did. So one of the things that we had talked about at the select board, and they've already done it, is with Tri-Town Health, we've committed $16,800 over the next 2 years to go toward their national restaurant food program. And if we can get certified, it opens up a $200,000 annual grant for them. So this is like, you're trying to multiply the money. So the idea is if we can use this for, say, the inflow and infiltration study, can we then get money from DEP and others to then, because we have the full study, to actually go after grants, to basically multiply the money. So, that's some things to discuss. But it does basically give us another reserve this year to hit. So.
Now, at this juncture, are there any other comments on what has come forward this evening? The next piece will be a meeting with the respective departments to focus in on get a definition of the operating budget, with the proposed expenses.
Can I expect to have responses to the questions that I posed to the fire chief?
Yes,
Yes,
he's preparing those and
Prepared.
we'll have them. Yep.
Are we going to talk about capital tonight?
No.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I think, the only thing I could say to that is, I think it's important to hear from the fire chief
Oh, yeah. No,
about both his operating budget and the capital request,
right.
and to get answers to the questions that have been posed.
Yes.
No, I don't think we need to belabor that. The chief will be prepared to discuss that, and the police chief will be prepared to discuss also his request
He has
for
a
additional
request
staff.
for additional.
Right. And also, we want to talk about the extent of vehicle acquisition for the highway department too, you know.
I get it.
And
Speaking of police, and I know you just said we're going to talk about that at the next meeting. As I read the chief's memo to you, I was wondering, where are our politicians? Where's Smitty on getting relief for these,
The police reform?
these operations that have been deleted and are costing us money? I'm not expressing that very well, but his point was, we have to hire a full-time man, woman, because these junior officers can't be trained anymore. And, I mean, isn't that a political issue that our,
So the Police Reform Act has basically removed reserve officers over the next
It's done.
couple of years. Yep, it's already been done. They want all police officers trained to a certain level of training that they've just eliminated reserve officers. And it's going to have a drastic impact to
one of these
budgets.
unfunded mandates from
Yes.
state government?
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, do it this way, but we're not going to pay for it.
So another one that we're looking at with other communities is they also want to have a trained social worker for
Oh, yeah.
incidents involving domestics and others instead of just police arriving. And we're working on a grant opportunity to try to go after that with Lee and Lennox also. So there's a bunch of stuff. I hate to say it, a lot of things are changing. The Police Reform Act will have drastic impacts on every police department across the state. And it's funny because we actually talked about it, even me and the fire chief were talking about it. The amount of training and everything else they're placing on firefighters is increasing and everything else. So this is really creating a changing world, which you can go back to the day when when all those services were volunteer. And then over time, you went from your constables to your police officers to your rest, and same thing with that and ambulance services and everything else. And more regulations are being placed on every one of our operations.
regulations which are difficult for smaller communities to support, okay? Based
Decimation by
on staff availability, funds availability, and so forth.
Well, these literally are unfunded mandates.
Yeah, decimation by decline, by
The
design.
state says, do it
Send it
this
down to
way,
us.
and don't ask us for the money. You find it.
But I think at some point, and that's not a discussion for this meeting. This has got to come up to Smitty Pignatelli and let him deal with.
But if it's a done deal,
The pressure was the opposite way politically to do police reform. And this is part of the
I mean,
police
this beats
reform.
funding the police, I'll grant you that.
No.
Yeah, it's,
Things like this raise, just every time we face one of these things, and this has been going on for a long time, we continue to face, but don't really address the whole issue of what Jay just brought up, which is the inability of small towns to continue to provide services on their own without a regional approach.
Well,
Yep.
we could spend 5 hours on it.
We labor with that.
Are there any other comments to
Before
come?
you go, I have,
Go ahead.
in open meetings, that's the only way I could do this, because I couldn't send it to everybody else. Jim, I just wanted you to have, these are the questions that I submitted, and Diane, for the fire chief, this is the reference, and Pam, I don't know if I ever, probably didn't give you this.
He has
Yeah,
all.
Bill has one. I couldn't send it to every member of the committee because of the open meeting law.
Right. The chief has that
Yeah, that's fine. I
information.
just wanted everybody to see.
Yep. All right, any other comments? You will hear from me as to our next meeting.
are
And
there any other departments offhand that people want to
and
bring
you can
into
come
this
back to me,
point,
any other departments that you would like to meet with.
or focus on the big three for now? And
The ones with with the capital budgets, the fire department, the police department,
Yep.
well, and Hugh, because that's where we're going to spend a fair amount of money. those are the ones that I think initially ought to come in.
All right.
Back to education, I'm sorry to keep going back to this, but it's such a big number. And I realize it's mostly out of our control. But I know for a couple of times, the school district has applied for funding to rebuild the high school, and they've been turned down at least twice.
I don't think they got turned down for the MSBA funding, did they?
Yeah,
They did,
yes,
Oh, they did.
and more than once.
yeah.
All right. So I didn't realize that.
And I think that the funding comes up early in the calendar year. It's like February or March. Do we have any idea whether they've applied yet again with a?
They have applied, and I know Patrick is actually, if he's still on, he might be able to comment because he's our representative.
Let's see who's on.
Because, you know, if,
They're expecting to hear on that the match in March.
March,
I mean, this month.
okay,
Is that MSGA that?
The MSBA.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and once that's approved, then they can move forward with the vote.
right.
So that's what I mean by
It's dead as a doornail.
Independent of the merger, the school district merger, these are sort of working on parallel tracks.
Okay, anything else, folks? More to follow. I mean, this is just, go ahead, Jim.
If a question comes up between now and our next meeting, can we submit it to Michael as far as a question on this, or should we submit it to you?
You could submit it to Michael and just copy me or vice
All
versa,
right.
just so that I can keep track of everything, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, but just make sure I get a copy of it, okay?
Great, thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you very much.
We'll move, we adjourn.
I second.
Meeting adjourned
I need a roll
at
call. I need a roll call.
6:59 PM. Thank you.
You need a roll call vote.
Yes.
All right, anybody opposed here? Neil, are you opposed to?
I am not opposed.
Okay, I think we're okay. Adjourned 6:59.